I'm Alex.
And I'm Len.
And today we're going to talk about how
and why
we built this bus.
We've been camping since 2016, so we've been doing this a while. We started off with a Ford F-150 and a bumper pull trailer. Then we moved on to a...
we got a Tiffin Allegro bus. It was a 99, I think, or maybe 2000. So it was an older one, but in good condition.
We loved her. Then we had our first kid, and moved on to a fifth wheel trailer with a Ram 3500 truck. And now
we have a bus. This is a Prevost custom bus that we built.
In the almost decade that we've been traveling, we have traveled tens of thousands of miles. We have visited 26 states, many of those
more than once. Several times.
We've been around the block a bit, and we had a lot of ideas about what kind of rig we wanted as our family has grown and as we continue to travel. And I work from the road. We had a lot of ideas about how a rig should be set up for us in our life. And that was not available on the market to just go buy, especially not affordably.
So we decided to build our own. And this is that story. There were four main reasons we decided to build a bus: layout, quality, upfront cost, and depreciation. We'll talk a little bit about each of those.
First things first, let's talk about layout. Most RVs on the market that we've seen, which is a lot, has a large master bedroom in the back, which takes up a lot of square footage. I'm talking about RVs that have bunkhouses for kids.
Even ones without bunkhouses, they're all just made for two people, mostly to travel. And if they accommodate a family, usually the kids are sleeping on like a pull-out couch in the front, or like a drop-down dinette table.
Yeah, and we have two young kids, and this was just not the setup that worked for us. We still have to deal with nap time. We anticipate having nap time for some years to come. And so having a bunkhouse or a front of the RV sleeping situation for them didn't make sense. We can't walk through their nap space to have to go to the bathroom and go to our room. So what we wanted was a good space for the kids all the way at the back of the bus. We wanted a good size bathroom with a residential size shower.
Yep, big shower for me.
Very important for you. I do work from the road, so I needed...
Work from home, but on the road when we travel.
Yeah, and so I needed a dedicated office space. I also am a cook. I love to cook. I definitely don't like to eat out a whole lot. So a big kitchen was really, really important to me. We'll get into all of that.
Lots of counter space.
Yes. And lastly, where do we sleep? We actually don't have a bedroom. We don't need one. We don't use the bedroom except to go to sleep. So we actually have a sleeper sofa that we take out every night. We will talk through that and what our reasoning was there. That touches on all of the main points of layout and what was important to us.
So it's definitely a little different than normal, but this is what we wanted, so this is what we made. Let's talk about quality. Most RVs, campers, and motorhomes alike, they sacrifice quality for weight. A lot of them need to do this just based off the chassis that they're built on, but we did not have that constraint with this bus. This bus has a 56,000 pound GVWR, meaning that's the maximum amount of weight that it can be. So we didn't have to worry about weight. We could put pretty much anything we wanted to in here. So we decided to build it more like a small apartment rather than a camper. That means that we got to choose to use residential appliances, like a full-size fridge, full-size sink, residential dishwasher, residential cabinets. We have a big shower. Everything that you would have in an apartment or a house, we have in here, just maybe a slightly smaller version. So weight wasn't an issue for us, and so we went with as high quality as we possibly could.
Affordably.
Yeah, affordably.
So let's talk about the money of it, the affordability aspect of this. Do you want to talk through that a little bit?
Sure. So to buy a modern luxury diesel motorhome, you're going to spend $400,000 pretty easily. We do not have that to spend right now, so we decided to build this as a cost savings measure to get a nice motorhome, including purchasing the bus. We are in this whole thing for less than 40 grand, and that includes about $6,000 worth of new tires.
Yeah. Tires are expensive, probably the most expensive piece of this entire build.
Actually, yes, I think that's right.
Yeah.
So the most expensive individual component.
We do get creative along this process and where we find things, what we buy new, what we buy used, where we can source things from family and friends, things they're not using anymore. We've been fortunate in that department as well. But our appliances, at least at the upfront, we got a lot of them on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, dishwasher was used, the fridge was used. That actually turned out to not be a great idea. Talk about that another time.
Yeah, countertops came from a discount
liquidator.
Floors came from a liquidator. Maybe.
No, the floors came from Menards.
Oh, Menards, yeah. So, it's in an effort to save money in the long run and not spend $200,000 on a rig that we're going to take all across the country. That was one of the reasons we decided to build our own, because it ended up being so much cheaper to do it that way.
Yeah, so a close follow-up to upfront cost is depreciation. Mm-hmm. So with every other camper we've had, we've experienced depreciation. That's completely normal and expected in this industry. Most RVs and campers depreciate very quickly. And we were tired of paying for not only the operating cost of an RV, but the depreciation. It just takes a lot of the fun out of it. So part of our plan with this bus is that this should never depreciate, and we actually might make a little bit of money on it when the day comes that we decide to sell it. Let's talk about Teardown. So when we bought this bus in October of 2024, it was a fully seated passenger bus plus a bathroom. All of that had to be removed before we could even start building. So how did we do that? We had to unbolt all the seats from the floor. This actually wasn't too hard, but they're pretty heavy, and getting them out of the bus was a little bit of a trick. We had to prop open one of the windows and literally throw the seats out of the window. When I was throwing one of the last seats out of the window of the bus, part of the seat hit the glass and actually cracked it. This is extremely frustrating, as these windows are not manufactured anymore, and it's extremely expensive and difficult to find a replacement. We'll talk more about this later. Once all the seats were out, I had to remove all the floor ducts. These are the original HVAC system, so air is blown through these ducts along the outside of the floor underneath the windows. All this was getting removed because we're putting in a big mini split system. The next thing to take out was probably the worst, the overhead bins. The overhead bins on a passenger bus, I think, are installed before the roof of the bus gets put on. There's a big aluminum extrusion that is one giant piece that's 45 feet long, all the way from the front to the back of the bus. A close second to taking out the overhead bins was the bathroom. The bathroom was a real pain. The whole thing was basically one giant fiberglass piece that was glued into place in the back of the bus. There's really no way to get it out except to cut it into small pieces using a sawzall. After the bathroom is out, it's time to take out all the old ceiling. The ceiling had this kind of funny colored gray and white fabric on the top, and all of that needed to come out. It didn't smell super great, kind of dirty, didn't enjoy taking this out. I can't even tell you how many hundreds of feet of wire I took out of the overhead bins and related components. The old TVs and all the buttons and lights above every passenger seat added up to a ton of wire. We're talking several hundred feet of wire here. Since I wasn't going to be using the factory over-the-road air conditioning system, all that had to go. That involved taking a huge air compressor out of the engine bay area, taking out the condensers, and a lot of lines and control systems. All in all, we took out over 5,000 pounds worth of debris from this bus during the teardown process. It took about a month and a half to do all the teardown, and generally it was a lot more work than I expected. Let's get into the build. This might get kind of long and technical, so I'm going to break this up into categories, and you can see the different time markers at the bottom of the video if you want to skip ahead to a certain part that you're interested in. Let's go through the categories here. First, we have the divider walls, the rear bunk, replacement window, ceiling, window treatments, the AC system overview, shower, toilet, plumbing, electrical, cabinets, countertop, wallpaper, flooring, trailer hitch, generator, inverter and battery, and future plans. The divider walls are what I'm calling the wall pieces that divide the bus from front to back. So we have the living room and kitchen area, then we have our office / guest room area, then our bathroom, and the rear bunk. So we have 3 divider walls in this bus. Each divider wall is 2 layers of 3/4 inch marine grade plywood glued together and put into place. The walls are screwed into the floor and to the trusses that run through the ceiling of the bus. This makes them extremely sturdy, very thick, and pretty sound resistant too. Getting the first one cut was pretty tricky. I used cardboard as a template and I just freehanded it until I got one to fit just right. Then I transferred that design to 1 sheet of plywood, made sure it fit, and then I used a router with a tracer bit to copy that profile onto the other pieces. Talking about the rear bunk, we wanted the kids' room to be all the way in the back, and for starters, we put 1 bunk at the top, and we will soon put a second bunk for our son below that. To put the bunk in the back, we needed to make a steel frame because the back cap of the bus is all fiberglass and there's nothing to mount anything to. The steel frame served 2 purposes. It worked both as a structural member for the bunk and it gave us something to screw our wood wall panels to make it look the way we wanted.
This is a very functional space that also needed to be able to change as the kids get older. Up until very recently, there actually was a pack and play here. There is some paint missing that will be repainted soon. But the pack and play was for obviously our baby as he was young. He is now not able to be contained by a pack and play. So we took that out of here. We will be adding another bunk. But this space was, again, just really important to us that we could have a quiet, dark, space at the back of the bus where they can maintain their sleep schedules as best as possible. We are traveling. All of our lights do continue back here. And then also want to point out actually the wallpaper, this was really fun. This wasn't actually wallpaper. This is fabric that we used. And I thought it was a really fun print and we got this from Joann's. And we use this on the wall with tacky 3M spray glue. It has worked really, really well. It holds up to heat and to cold very well. But again, this is a space where there's enough room for kids in here. They can play. I can change a diaper in here. Obviously, I can stand with no problem. We keep their clothes and their toys in here. But this is a multifunctional space and it will continue to change as the kids get older. One detail that was also really important to us, and it might be hard to tell on the camera, is that the bunk here is a full-length twin-size bed. So while our children are young and that they don't need all that room, we wanted to make sure that as they grew and got bigger, that this, especially this bunk, because this is the only thing that won't change, this is a steel frame that Alex welded into the bus. We wanted to make sure that there was going to be enough room as they got bigger and that this space would grow with them.
Remember talking about that broken window? Well, that was towards the front of the bus, and we couldn't have that. Fortunately, all the windows on the bus are the same, so I was able to take the window that was going to be behind where the shower was, and I moved it up and replaced the broken one with that. So now we had a big hole behind the shower. So I got a big sheet of aluminum custom cut to fit the opening of the window, and I riveted it into place. The sheet of aluminum I got is just a little bit thinner than 1/8 of an inch, and it rested perfectly inside this channel that the window seal would rest against.
We did keep so many of our windows. This was something that was really, really important to us. We love having a good view. So many places that we camp, we had great views. And a lot of campers that we've had in the past, all of our campers, didn't have this much view. Obviously, we're in our barn. This is where this thing lives. So this is not the view that we were looking for. But I do want to point out this is super important to us. So we did want to keep as many windows as we could for this natural light. It's just such a great experience when you're camping.
The ceiling on this bus is made out of 4x8 panels purchased from a local big box supplier. These panels are supposed to look like a teak simulation product, and I think generally they look pretty good. They were very easy to work with, and it made the ceiling go up pretty fast. First, we ran furring strips lengthwise from front to back on the ceiling in several different places. This gave us something to screw the ceiling panels to. The center of our ceiling is a drop ceiling, meaning we put thicker spacers in this part that we could screw a piece of plywood to that would be lower than the rest of the ceiling. This would give us a channel to run all our wiring through for all our lights. Additionally, we put LEDs on the side of the drop part of the ceiling. This shines outward on the ceiling and it gives a nice glow in the evening time. We used wireless light switches in all of our different rooms on the bus. This made wiring so much easier. It literally saved us probably a couple 100 feet of wiring. I would highly recommend these wireless light switches to anyone doing a project like this. It just makes everything so much easier. I'll put a link below to the wireless switches I used.
Let's talk about office. This was something that we mentioned earlier, and this was something that was really important when we were coming up with our layout for this build. Behind the camera, there's bunks. You'll see those at some point in this video. But in this bunk room, there's the office space. So everything that we wanted it to be multifunctional. So when I'm not working, we don't want it to be just a stagnant office space that's taking up floor space. So we did use a part of the butcher block that we had out in the kitchen and made a flip up desk. I have fairly few things that I need to use for work, just my computer, my mouse. I do use an external screen, which I leave on this shelf. I don't use it all the time, but it's out of the way. So when I'm not working, it's easy for me to just put this away. Now, what's also important here is that this was in the middle of the bus. I did not need to go through the kids' room to get to my office if they are napping. And we also have the bathroom as a buffer space if they are napping. And we have doors that can shut and keep people in the front, keep people in the back, so that I have a quiet space for me to take meetings if and when I need to. Other than that, I typically like to work outside if it's nice weather, if I don't have a meeting to take. So that's the office space. It's pretty simple, but it was just something that was really, really important that I had a good space to continue working my remote job while we travel around the country.
Talking about the window treatments. So all of the windows on the bus needed to have some type of covering around them. We removed all the factory stuff because it was color matched, it was covered in carpet, and it just didn't look good for what we had planned. So I used plywood to make a frame around all of the window pillars and eventually wrapped all of this in a faux leather material that we purchased from Joann's. The fabric was spray glued on, wrapped around the edges, and stapled on the back. So far, it's holding up great. In this bus, I decided to use a big mini split system. I used a 36,000 BTU quad zone mini split system. That means that I have one big outdoor condenser unit and I have 4 indoor head units that I dispersed evenly throughout the bus so we have good airflow and good climate control all the way through the bus. This system is pretty complicated and installing it was very tricky, so I'll probably do a more detailed video on this later if you're interested. The outside unit got installed where the old over-the-road air conditioner condenser got removed from. The bus already had this big louvered panel door on the side, and there's a perfect size compartment to fit this big outdoor unit in. We chose to use a mini split system primarily due to efficiency. I was very tempted to use rooftop units, but they just aren't very efficient. They use a lot of power, and we wanted this bus to be as energy efficient as possible because we spent a lot of time not hooked up to a campground. This mini split system can keep our bus as cold as we want in the summer and as warm as we want in the winter. When I was building this bus, it got down to about 0 degrees, and the mini split was still able to keep it very comfortable in the bus while I was working on it. Let's talk about the shower. I'm a guy that really likes a nice shower. It's one of the ways that I could relax at the end of a day, and I just really enjoy a nice big shower. We have one at home, and I really wanted one on the bus. I've never worked with tile before, so I thought this would be a great time to figure it out. First, we made the plywood frame around where the shower is going to go. We put the shower pan in first, then we put the rock board around the side, then we waterproofed that, and then we used mortar and put the tile on. It really wasn't that hard, but it was a lot of work. Everything I learned about this project, I learned on YouTube in the course of a few hours. My wife and I both had some concerns about the tile cracking as the bus went down the road, but we've had 0 issues over the last 15,000 miles. Everybody's favorite thing to talk about is the toilet. On this bus, we used a marine macerating toilet. We did this for a couple reasons. Primarily because where we wanted to put the bathroom in this bus was directly over the rear axle, meaning that we couldn't use a traditional RV toilet that requires the black tank to be directly below the toilet. The macerating toilets grind everything up in the back of the toilet and pump it through a much smaller or even flexible line to wherever your black tank might be. This is a little more expensive, but it made this build possible. The electrical system on this bus is kind of a big topic. If you're interested in hearing more, let me know in the comments below and I can make a more detailed video on it in the future. Generally speaking, this bus currently has 2 power inputs, but will soon have 3 power inputs: solar, generator, and shore power. All of this feeds into our inverter, which is an all-in-one 12,000 watt inverter. From there, the power goes into our breaker box, which is nearly full, and then out into the rest of the bus. Most of the wires are run through the drop ceiling or underneath the floor and pop up where they're needed. We didn't use any 12 volt components in this build, which is different than most campers. Most campers use 12 volt lighting and or TVs or fridges, but everything in here is residential. In this bus, we used residential cabinets. We bought them from Menards. We designed the kitchen online, went and picked them up, put them together, and bolted them in. Worked great. Would highly recommend it. I could buy them for way cheaper than I could build them. The only thing we did differently is that we added custom toe kick drawers underneath each cabinet box. This was essentially free space because otherwise that space is normally wasted. This gives us lots of room to put a ton of extra stuff, and space is always at a premium inside of a motorhome. For our countertops, we use butcher block for a couple reasons. One, cost. Butcher block is a great option, but it doesn't cost nearly as much as marble or quartz or common other countertops. Secondly, you can work with it with normal woodworking tools. This is great for our custom install. We needed to cut out the sinkhole, and we wanted these flip up, flip down countertop extensions. So I needed to be able to work with the material that we chose. We used a lot of wallpaper in this build to cover up all the plywood. Peel and stick is commonly available, however, it doesn't stick very well to plywood. To get around this, first we applied a layer of spray glue to all the plywood. After the spray glue got tacky, then the peel and stick would adhere just fine. The flooring in this bus is a luxury vinyl flooring product. We purchased it from a local big box store, but we made sure to get one with an extra thick wear layer. Generally speaking, the floor installed pretty quick and without too much hassle.
The kitchen. This was really important. So much of this is really important for a lot of reasons. One, I really love to cook, so I wanted to have a good space where I had countertop to really do cooking and prepping and the things that I like to do. But also, we wanted a big kitchen because we did sacrifice a lot of storage space. A lot of RVs come with overhead storage, cabinets and things where you can store stuff. We obviously don't have any of that in this bus as we were building it. So the kitchen became a place where we wanted to make sure that this was super functional. We wanted to make sure we had a lot of drawer space and additional space with the under cabinet toe kick drawers so that this was usable for so many things other than just food, plates, cups. We do have cords and chargers in here. We do have sunglasses and things in here. So this was really big for us. One other thing that we also wanted to make sure that we did while we were designing this space was to make sure that we had a drawer that was big enough to hold our large appliances. So crock pot, instant pot, coffee maker, things like that. We wanted to make sure we could put into one place, that it was going to stay put, not jostle around. And we also didn't need to have overhead storage, which is where we kept stuff like that in our previous fifth wheel. So this was a really well thought out space. I'm super happy with it, and it stays very cool with the air conditioning right there. This is our bed. Like I mentioned earlier, we don't have a bedroom because we don't really use one. So this bed worked really well for us because we couldn't do a traditional pull-out couch where the length of the bed would be this way. It would run into the chair. So we did find this couch at IKEA, which we love. There is storage inside where we keep all of our bedding, and this folds down. The catch here, yes, we do make our bed every single night, and we do break down the bed every single morning. That might get annoying after a few years. It hasn't yet. We've taken this across the country, and it hasn't been an issue yet. So this is how we really solved the bed issue. We're the last ones to go to bed. So put the kids to bed, come out, relax, make the bed, go to sleep.
Safety was super important for both my wife and I, especially considering we have 2 small kids.
Most Class A's or Class C's, anything that you can drive in, there's not a good spot for car seats. This was a really big problem for me personally. maybe a little bit too much of a problem, but I really, really feel strongly about car seat safety. So I wanted to make sure that we did everything we could to make it as safe as possible for our kids to be in this bus. They clearly can't be just free roaming while we're in high traffic or anything like that. They definitely need to be strapped in. And if in the event, unfortunately, if we're in an accident, I want to make sure that they are as safe as possible and that their seats can be properly installed. So lots of times you run into an RV where somebody might try to put their car seat in a dinette. This was not.
Those are usually just made out of 2x4s or something under the frame. They're not that strong. They're just put together with wood screws, and we don't feel confident that in the event of an accident that they would properly secure a car seat.
So this really goes back to quality, build quality. We wanted to make sure that we did everything that we could. So we did purchase automotive seats. We looked at RV seats. They are very expensive. Maybe we'll get some one day, but they're very, very expensive. So we did purchase automotive seats. And then you welded together bases, swivel bases that we could use. And then those are bolted to the frame?
I made custom steel bases that do incorporate an automotive swivel, so that our seats can turn around and we can use them in our living room here. But the seat bases are made out of heavy gauge steel, and they are bolted through the floor into steel cross members in the bus. So we feel very good about how safe they are.
Much safer than a plywood dinette. Now, I want to also make sure that we put this out there. I'm not at all saying that this is crash tested, that this is the safest way. This is how we felt safe. We felt like this was the best path forward for our build and for our bus. And we're also very, very confident in your welding skills. You've been welding for many, many years now. So you're a very skilled welder. So these are things where if it's within your skill set, it's an option. It was just something that was really important to us, instead of building this like a lot of traditional RVs where there may be a dinette or a jackknife couch or something like that. The other piece of this too is that we wanted to make sure that we had seat belts. That was also what needed to happen so that we don't have anchor points. We can't do the latch system with the car seats. We did need to make sure that we had safe seat belts.
We bought automotive seat belts, and those are bolted into the steel bases that I made. So they're very sturdy. We knew we wanted to tow something behind the motorhome. We weren't sure yet if it was going to be flat towing a vehicle on a trailer, or using a tow dolly, but either way, we needed a trailer hitch. I have a lot of welding and custom fabrication experience, so I decided to fab one up myself. This project wasn't very fun, and I would not recommend doing this unless you feel extremely confident in your fabrication skills. I spent a really long time trying to figure out what type of generator I wanted to use in this bus. The easiest option was to just go to Harbor Freight or Amazon and buy some inverter style gas powered generator. They're pretty inexpensive, they're pretty quiet, and generally they work great. The downside to this would be that it could not be permanently installed in the bus, or at least not easily, and I'd have to carry a second type of fuel. What I wanted was a diesel generator. I originally thought that I was going to have to get one out of a light tower, but I ended up finding this one on Facebook Marketplace for only $400. The trick was it hadn't been run in 15 years, so it was a bit of a gamble to see if it still worked. This is a Kubota powered PowerTech 8 kilowatt generator. I brought it home, cleaned it up, put fresh fuel in it, and it fired right up. Getting installed into the bus was a little tricky. I had to weld in some custom brackets to hold it in place and reroute a couple of the electrical components to make it fit. Part of having a diesel generator is that I wanted to plumb it into the existing fuel system on the bus. This bus has a 235 gallon diesel fuel tank, so I wanted to be able to tap into that and not carry around extra jugs of fuel for the generator. This required an external fuel pump that would transfer the fuel all the way back about 20 feet from the tank to the generator, and using both an additional fuel line and a return all the way back to the tank. Let's talk about plumbing. On this bus, we went with simple. I used 2 IBC totes. You see these things all the time. They're kind of a transparent tank inside of a metal cage, usually on the pallet. They're used for all sorts of industrial applications, and you can buy these tanks for not much money. You can even get them food grade, which is what we did for this bus. I bought 2 of these tanks for $75 a piece, one for freshwater and one for our black tank. We used a combined gray and black tank on this bus. Each of these tanks is 265 gallons, so that gives us a ton of water. We can be without hookups comfortably for 5 to 7 days, even using our high flow water appliances and the dishwasher and the shower. These tanks fit in the bays down below the bus. You might think this is a lot of weight, and it is, but each one of these bays on the bus is rated to hold over 2,000 pounds of weight. This front one here is our freshwater tank. On either side of it is our battery and our inverter. We'll talk about those in a second. The black tank is located just in front of the rear axle. Let's talk about laundry. We used to spend a lot of money on laundromats, and it took a long time to drive there, do your laundry, fold it, and come back. So on our bus, we definitely wanted to incorporate a washer and a dryer. We really like to cook and cook well when we're on the road, and we also like to cook outside when weather allows. We wanted an outdoor kitchen. I made this big pull-out outdoor kitchen. It serves both as a cooking surface and a storage area. We can pull this out, have running water and a cooktop and a place for our griddle on a nice stainless steel, easy to clean surface, and store everything down below and slide it back in when we're done. This is going to get painted or otherwise decorated in the future. Right now it's a little ugly, but it's very functional. To make this outdoor kitchen drain work, I had to add an ejector pump down below it because the sink is below where the input for our black tank is, so the water drains into this small ejector pump located down below the sink, and then once that pump gets full, it pumps all of that water back to the black tank. This will add a step when it comes to winterizing, but it's a price I'm willing to pay. No outdoor kitchen area is complete without a mini fridge, so we added one in the bay right next to it. Next to this mini fridge, you can see our battery. This is a 14.6 kilowatt hour, 48 volt residential storage battery. This provides us a ton of battery capacity for our rig. On the other side here, you can see our 12,000 watt inverter. This thing is an absolute powerhouse. We can run everything we want to all at the same time on this bus, and it just keeps going. If you're interested in solar and off-grid type stuff, let me know in the comments below. Soon we're going to be doing a 4,000 watt rooftop solar install on this bus. If you haven't noticed by now, there's a few things still missing on this bus. We don't have any awnings. There's lots of things that still need painted. We plan to do solar on the roof, and we need flooring up in the front area where the driver seat is. All this is coming soon, but the bus has been functional for this season with us, and we're going to wrap up all those projects here this winter. Hopefully that gave you an idea of what it took to build this bus. Overall, it took me about 4 months to do both the teardown and the build of most of this bus. A few things took longer than that, but between the first day of teardown and taking our first trip was about 4 months. I did work on it mostly full time, meaning about 8 hours a day or more in some cases for those 4 months. I hope you enjoyed this overview of the build. If you're interested in learning more about one specific aspect, please let me know in the comments below what you want to know more about. If we get enough comments about one particular topic, I'll definitely do a video on it so you guys can learn more about what I did.